10 a.m. Madam Secretary, will you do the roll call, please?
I will. Thank you and good morning, everyone. Rachel Anger is here. Kathy Calhoun. Here. John Kalila.
Here.
Kenny Curley.
Here.
Pam Delavar.
Here.
Kathy Dunham.
Here.
George Eichenhauser.
Here.
Mark Hannon.
Here.
Yukiko Hayata.
Here.
Carol Krasnowski.
Here.
Rich Maston.
Here.
Melanie Morgan.
Here.
Pam Moser.
Here.
Paula Noble.
Here.
Sharon Roy. Is Sharon on the call? We'll swing back around and pick up Sharon. Michael Shelton.
Here.
Russell Webb.
Here.
Annette Wilson.
Here.
And from central office, we have Eileen Tartaglia.
Here.
Shelley Perkins.
Here.
James Simbro.
Here.
I'm sure there's someone I've forgotten. Is there anyone
Did
as
you
a
call Matthew?
panelist who?
Did you call Matthew?
Oh, I knew there was someone else. Matthew Wong.
Hi, here.
Is Eva Chen on the call?
No.
No,
And-
no, Eva.
and
I'm
sh-
gonna circle back around for Sharon Roy.
She just came in,
Oh, perfect.
so she should be.
I apologize for my scratchy voice. This is the best I have for you today.
Okay, Rachel, thank you very much. I'm calling the meeting to order. Before we get started, I have a good morning message that I'd like to share with all.
You want that on the screen, Rich?
Yes,
Or-
please, Eileen. Good morning, good evening, and good afternoon to all. Welcome to the 2022 CFA October Board Meeting. Today's meeting is being conducted as a webinar. Fanciers from all over the world will be able to watch the meeting via Zoom. The video will be posted on the CFA website in the next few days. I start today's meeting with thanking all board members, committee members, central office staff, and contributors that have worked extremely hard all season long, making it possible to conduct the business of CFA. I also thank the CFA family of breeders, exhibitors, and fanciers that participate in this amazing organization. And last, but definitely not least, I want to recognize our furry friends, our cats that we love and that love us more. CFA is indeed a family, and as a family, we support each other through the good times and the trying times. Many of our fanciers have been experiencing the impact of Hurricane Ian, a Category 4 hurricane with wind speeds of 150 miles per hour when it made landfall in southern Florida. And a Category 1 hurricane when it made landfall in South Carolina. People in Florida, Georgia, South Carolina, and North Carolina are going through an unmanageable situation. The catastrophic damage of Hurricane Ian is staggering as communities have been destroyed and many residents have lost everything. Many people will need help as they try to rebuild their lives. Reach out to those you may know that are impacted and let them know we stand with them. Let us take a moment of silence for those who have managed to survive and those who tragically lost their lives. Thank you. Okay, thank you all. First item on the agenda is to approve the orders of the day. I have one item that I need to bring to our attention. I notice we need to add appeal deliberations to closed session later today. May I have a motion in a second, please?
George, so moves.
Any seconds?
Thank you, George and Kenny. Is there any discussions to adding this to the agenda? Okay, any objections? Seeing no discussions and no objections, this will be added to today's orders of the day. Mark Hannon, I'm sorry, Pam Delabar.
I would like to add an item, I guess, to new business for the Breeders Assist program under Charlene Campbell, who's done a wonderful job in helping our people in the Ukraine. But to I guess, ask for donations to the Breeder Assist Fund to be used to help not only individuals, but also organizations and shelters who are adversely affected by the effects of this storm. I
Kathy,
think that
second.
would.
Oh, sorry.
Blah!
Fully in favor of this.
Oh,
Fully in
okay.
favor.
All right, we have Pam Delabar with motion. Kathy Calhoun is the second. Pam, you can review all this during the new business, assuming this gets approved. Is there any discussion or objections to Pam's motion? Mark and Pam, you have your hands up. I'm sure you're adding to the orders of the day.
Correct.
Okay. Seeing no objections, we will add that to new business. Thank you, Pam. Mark Hannon.
The latest edition of the agenda that I have, which is the one on screen, I want to subtract one, number 10 yearbook. The yearbook is wrapped into the publications report.
Okay. Any objections? Just speak up if you have an objection to Mark's. Pam Mosier.
I'd like to add to the agenda on Sunday in closed session, review and any questions you have on an event I attended in San Francisco.
George seconds.
Okay, any objections? Please speak up. No objections. Pam's item is added to the closed session, executive session for Sunday. Thank you, Pam. Kenny Curley.
Item number 8 can be removed. It's included in the ID report by Kathy.
Okay, thank you, Kenny. Sharon Roy, do you have a couple of items you would like to add to the agenda?
Yes, and I did send them over this morning or last night after I received them from Dave Pete, but they'll be part of the new experimental report. And the thing that I had asked for you and Rachel for some advice on where to put it in the agenda has been resolved, so I don't have to bring it up at all.
Okay, so the item that you submitted this morning is going to be reviewed in the experimental format?
Yes.
Okay, very good. Rachel? Rachel, go ahead.
So- Yes, I'm sorry. I have to bounce back and forth between screens because unlike George, I only have one computer. I was trying to find the agenda item for the Region 4 show request that has been withdrawn. So we can remove that from the agenda as well.
Okay, very good. Thank you. Any other additions, corrections, or deletions? Pam Delabar?
I just needed a clarification on Mark Hannon's addition to the agenda.
I don't believe. Mark
I didn't
had-
get all of it down. I'm doing notes.
Pam, I
I
don't
didn't-
believe Mark had any additions. He was just stating that yearbook falls under publications.
I had a deletion.
Okay, we got the thumbs up. Rachel?
Just to note that in the compiled reports, you'll see I made a note that, for instance, for the yearbook agenda item, I noted that it was included within number 9. And the AWA CSA is included within number 7. I also made a note that the Region 4 item was withdrawn. So those appear that way in your compiled reports now. If you're scrolling along, either with the board distributed version or the one that was published. And those will, in the final minutes, those will magically disappear.
Thank you, Rachel. Okay, thank you all. May I have a motion to approve the
I-
revised order?
I move we approve the agenda as amended.
May I have a second?
I second.
Who second?
Paula,
Thank you, Paula. Thank you, George. Any objections, please raise your hand. Seeing no objections, the orders of the day are approved. We may move into the first order, or I'm sorry, we move into the second item on the agenda. Rachel,
I'm going to move that we approve the motions that require ratification with the exception of number 1 as it failed. And you'll notice that this issue was resolved in motion number 4.
Carol seconds.
Okay, and to finish that, number 5 was an executive session motion that involved a legal issue. So it doesn't appear on the screen, but that's included in my motion. So I move that we include motions 2 through the end of our motions that require ratification.
okay, are there any objections to Rachel's motion and Carol's second? Okay. The ratifications of the motions are approved.
Thank you, everyone.
Rachel, did you have anything else?
No, I'd just like to comment to those that are with us today about the extensive discussions that take place. So even though we handle motions online, we thoroughly investigate the issue, and our decisions are not taken lightly.
That is
And
so
that's all I
true.
have in the secretary's report. Thank you.
That is so true, Rachel. Thank you very much for making that comment. Melanie, please take
Yep.
us through the judging program.
I just want to note, start of time, if anyone's taking count in terms of ice cream, that it's 10:13. I get 3 extra minutes.
Okay, Melanie, yes, I am taking time.
Thank you. Okay. First of all, old habits die hard. My apologies. Our first action item needs to be withdrawn. Regretfully accepted the retirement of Donna Fuller, and we're informing the board of that. Sorry to waste. Eventually, this will be a time saver. It's just right now we're getting used to that. I'd also like to say, as we go through these things, there are many items in here that are here based off tradition and or just as an update to the board. If any of them you want to pull out and ask me questions, please stop me, but I'm pretty much going to go to those areas where we're looking for input and or have action items in the spirit of trying to expedite things. So the next thing that I planned on really discussing was the handling school update. Unless anyone has any questions on anything prior to that. All right, not seeing any hands going up. We completed the second beta test of the handling program a few weeks ago in Belgium. And Peter and I had debriefed after the first run at Garden State. We had a Zoom meeting and spoke over multiple messages, et cetera. He applied the lessons we learned and a whole lot more, and certainly improved upon the product that we had at Garden State. The event was well received. It ran really smoothly, at least as far as I can tell. We'd very much like to roll the program out, but we feel that a few more trial runs will give us a better feel for associated costs, as well as allow us to fine tune the product, just looking at the improvement from the first beta test to the second. It'll also give us time to budget for it during the regular budgeting cycle, with the ultimate goal, I think, ideally of having one event per region if desired by the region. No requirements on the region, but allowing them at least one per season. I have an action item, but I'd like to hear any feedback from the board as well on anything you might have heard about this. So I'm opening it up for that, and then I'll go to my action item.
Anybody have any questions or comments for Melanie?
Okay, then I'm going to go to my action item, which is to approve up to 3 more test sessions between now and the end of this current season so that we can fine tune the procedures and develop a workable budget based on realistic cost issues. The cost per session of these test sessions not to exceed $750 per event.
Thank you, Melanie. May I have a second, please?
Delabar seconds.
Thank you, Pam. Discussion? Kathy Calhoun, do you have any comments on this request?
No, I don't. I think that in order to have to fine tune the product, it needs some more testing. I fully agree. I don't think that the cost is prohibited.
Okay.
So I support it.
Thank you. Annette Wilson?
Hi, thank you. Can someone explain to me who is paying the cost of this now?
Melanie?
At Garden State, CFA paid the cost, and the club in Belgium covered all the costs.
And so, I'm sorry, can I ask another question?
Go ahead.
Okay, so on these 3 test sessions between now and the end of the season, what would be the expectation? So the regions have an idea if they want to hold one, who would be responsible for it? Or is it a combination?
It is a combination, and it would depend on what availabilities were, et cetera. At Garden State, we did not have a specified area where we had our own ring. Belgium did. It was vastly superior product to what we had at our first go around. So there will be some cost, I think, associated with potentially setting up extra cages or a ring, a mini ring. So we need to find out what those costs would be, and they will probably vary by show service slightly. We also at Garden State had the cost of my travel to get there, whereas in the Belgium show, Peter was already there and kind enough to give his time for both days. And he was already there. It was his show. And speaking about the both days, since we're discussing what happened there, it was really interesting to see many of the handlers handled on Saturday and then came back and handled on Sunday. And we saw significant improvements from day to day. So if possible on these test sessions, we would like to see that happen over 2 days. So we certainly wouldn't be looking at doing this ever at a 6-ring 1-day show, because cats would then, by definition, if be handled too many times. So we would limit it to a show that was a back-to-back with less than hopefully 5 rings per day. But
Okay, Melanie, thank you. Annette, are you all done?
I am, thank you.
Okay, Russell?
How many people participated in the program for Garden State and also in Belgium?
I believe at Garden State, I don't have the numbers in front of me, where it was 23 handlings. Was that correct? I'd have to go back to the minutes and look. In Belgium, we had 9 with 10 handlings.
Okay.
And there were only 85 cats entered at the Belgium show. So it was a significant percentage based off total entries.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. Russell, anything further?
No.
Okay, Kathy Calhoun?
Yes, while I think that this is a valuable program for CFA as we're trying to encourage additional people and identify people who are potential candidates for the judging program, I have no issue with any incremental cost to the clubs that CFA should cover that to the extent of $750. I believe that was the number that Melanie put with a total of $2,250.
Okay, thank you, Kathy. Melanie, I have a question for you. Will you and your committee be handling the expense side in terms of sending the expense to central office, or is the club supposed to be sending an expense to central office?
That's a good question. Kathy, what would you like us to do?
I would prefer if Melanie's team sends the expenses to Aline with a copy to me.
Then that's what will happen.
And I agree with that. Okay, great. Kathy, do you have anything further?
No, I'll take down my hand.
Okay, are there any further discussion? Oh, Pam Delabar?
Kathy, do you think there's any chance that our feline fanciers of Benelux could possibly get some money for running this for 2 days?
I would
Melanie,
certainly,
Kathy?
I was raising my hand.
Go ahead, Kathy.
Yes, I would certainly, I think that we should, this benefits CFA as a whole. I don't want this to be a burden on any club to participate in this. So Pam, if you'd reach out and find out what their incremental cost would have been, and I would, maybe we can use the same threshold or max of $750.
Well, of
Does that
course,
sound
I would
reasonable?
ask for the max of 750.
No, I'm not going to ask you to, I'm asking for incremental costs. So if they didn't spend $750 incrementally, I would trust that
It
you would
would-
just ask for what they spent, incremental cost, with a
Which
maximum
would
of
be,
750.
which would be difficult to do in retrospect 2 weeks away,
Well,
past.
Okay, hang on one second here. We're deviating from the action item that we're tending to, and I would like to get back to Pam's item after we finalize this one, because I don't want to complicate it. And I do have comments on Pam's question or request in Kathy's recommendations. So let's set aside Pam's request after this one. Annette?
Thank you. Sorry, I can't figure out my mute button. Yeah, I see, this is a little bit why I'm concerned about this. I think, this is something that should be negotiated with the club at the time. And I think that's probably what happened with these other two situations. And I think if the club has, if there's not a big incremental cost, it seems to me there's a benefit to the club also. Maybe not, I don't know. But I don't see this as a giveaway just because a show is having this. That's why I asked the question. The cost not to exceed $750 per event. How is this presented to a club? And I assume that's done ahead of time and the costs are negotiated or defined well before the event is held. Thank you.
Melanie?
Thank you, Rich. Yeah, the costs that I anticipate would be whatever a show service is charging to set up an extra ring. If there isn't an extra charge for that, then that expenditure would not be approved. I'm hoping that we'll be well under the $750 per event. I simply gave us a cap. The other cost that we anticipate is if a judge isn't there, then we may have to pay for travel. That said, if the judge is already there and willing to do it, then we're not paying for doing it, at least not at this point. Although once we've done the beta test and we break this out, that may be something we decide to roll in to get a nominal fee. It's an inordinate amount of work to do. I know that when I was done, the 2 days at Garden State, I would rather have judged a $450 show. That said, I happily did it as a benefit to CFA. So we're putting the $750 cap in there, but really these 3 beta tests are to test out to see how much the incremental charges are. If there are no incremental charges at that show, and for example, if we chose a show to do one of these next beta tests at a show where I was judging on a Saturday and there was a 2 rings set up because there was a double specialty ring. So I was already there and there was already a ring there. Then the only incremental cost would be perhaps an extra night in the hotel. So we're going to try to minimize the cost. This is a benefit to CFA. I also believe that potentially it could be a benefit to clubs for potential entries if these things are well publicized in advance. But we're not in any way trying to make money off of these things. We just want to make sure that it doesn't become a burden on any of our clubs.
Thank you, Melanie. Kathy Cahoon?
Yes, this is a beta test. This is how we test it out and try and find out, establish a threshold for cost, establish what's covered. If I fully would hope that the clubs would get a few more entries because of it. And I am, we've already set the precedence through BAOS of paying for judges that do over and above to train. We set a threshold. We've already set a precedence for that. So that's not terribly out of order. But at this point, we're just trying to, this is a beta. This is like this will be, if we have 3 more, this will be 5. So I think we just need to step back and see what happens with the 5. And then, as Melanie has already alluded to, present a budget in January, and we can vote on the parameters.
Okay, thank you, Kathy. Is there any more discussion before I call for the vote? Are there any objections to this motion? Seeing no objections, this motion has passed unanimously. Congratulations, Melanie.
Thank you all.
I would like to go back to Pam Delabar's request, and before we debate Pam Delabar's request, I need Rachel or Aline to go back to June Sunday board meeting transcript, because Melanie, I believe you brought this up in June, and you may have already established a set amount not to exceed for those 2 shows. And one was the Belgium show, one was Garden State. And I just don't want the board to present another motion if there was already something we did back then. So if anybody has that transcript, Pam Delabar, do you have anything on that?
No, I don't. I was just going to say, let me withdraw anything further on this and work with Melanie to see, and Peter to find out which, get facts, basically.
Okay, thank you, Pam. Melanie, do you have anything from the June request?
Well, I can speak to what was discussed there. There was no budget assigned to the Belgium show because Peter and I had already discussed it, and there was a limit of $500 discussed for the Garden State show.
Okay, very good. I like Pam Delabar's recommendation to discuss it with Melanie, and then we don't have to take up much more time on this. Rachel?
I'll go into the June transcript and just double check what we did, although it sounds like it's not a pressing matter that we need the information right now.
Okay, thank you.
But I'll share
Rachel.
that with Pam and Melanie.
Great, thank you. Thank you, Pam and Melanie, for working out a compromise. Melanie, we're back to you.
All right, thanks. So the next issue that I'd like to discuss with the board is in the infancy of the idea being fully broken out. And basically, I think as any of you who've managed to wade through the reports for this meeting know, much of the content on the judging program report is designed to address what we felt, the judging program committee felt, was a mandate from the board to address the alarming attrition rates that we're experiencing with our judging corps. Coming up, our next item, you'll see that our main focus for addressing this very real issue. But this designated handler concept is one that we're bringing back up because it provides a solution from the other side of the coin. We're losing and have lost invaluable knowledge and expertise as more and more of our experienced and seasoned judges are making the difficult decision to step away from the judging ring. If we can design and implement a program that enables us to take advantage of that expertise for even just a little bit longer, as we try to fill that gap that we're currently experiencing with new blood from the other end, which you'll see from the judging program rules coming up, then CFA as a whole will, in my opinion, benefit greatly. In addition to providing us with access to experienced CFA all-breed judges, this program, the added advantage would be that it provides another level for aspiring judges. So right now, people come into the cat fancy because they love cats, then they exhibit, then possibly they breed. Then they're like, we want to do something more, so they go into the clerking program, but there's no step past this. With a specific official designated handler program, they can become licensed and gain handling experience, and that can contribute moving forward, hopefully, to their own application. So it benefits both ends when you really think about it. That said, in the interest of full disclosure, this whole concept is without question controversial. The judging program committee is not in complete agreement about this. in their support of it at all. But I feel like we were asked to bring solutions to the board, and that those solutions are going to mean that we have to step out of our comfort zones. We have to accept some new ideas and look at new things. The knowledge and skills that our experienced judges have is really, really something that will benefit all of us. So we haven't broken the program out in terms of the impact on show rules and specifics because of the controversy around it. But we want board approval before taking it to that next step. Our action item for now is merely to approve the concept of creating a handler program to support our aging or recovering judges while providing experience to breeders and exhibitors while handling and ring management experience. And before I open it up to the barrage of comments, I would like to point out that there are many associations that use stewards to bring cats to and from the judge. The judge stands. Well, I think in this instance, we would want them to be able to stand and handles the cats, and then someone takes them back.
Melanie, before I go further and ask for comments, do you want to do your action item or do you want discussion?
Oh, all right, let's do the action item and then
Okay.
that way we, okay, yes. So approve the designated.
Read your action item and I'll ask for a second.
Okay, the action item is to approve the designated handler program concept for presentation to the board of the December meeting.
May I have a second, please?
Rachel
Delabar will
seconds
second.
with the right to vote no. Okay.
Okay, I got Rachel, I believe, first, with the right to vote no as a second. Okay, discussion in order is hands raised. Kathy, I see you. Do you need me to call on you first?
I just want, so this is just a technical thing and maybe it's not a big deal,
Mhm.
but actually these should be addressed not as action items, but motions.
Okay,
Right?
you're correct. It's a motion.
It's a motion. So
Mhm.
I get, because in the lead in, it's just discussed as an action item. And
No, you're
a second
correct.
to that.
It is a motion.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay.
Rachel?
Thank you. Well, we've always used the terms interchangeably, so I seconded with a right to vote no. The actual motion is to explore the concept. While I'm opposed to the concept, I would like to see this fleshed out a little bit more. To me, the basic premise is who is handling our cats. We're here for the cats. That's the reason we're here. And if we are allowing someone that's not well-trained and an expert in handling cats to do that job, then how are we honoring our basic reason for being here? So from a very fundamental level, I'm against this. I would like to see us discuss also implementing an exit plan for judges that are unable to handle cats. From my own personal experience, I took some time off because I had a concern that caused me to worry about being able to finish on time, to be able to service the club, show up and handle the cats to the very best of my ability. I felt there was a possibility that might be compromised, and that was my personal decision. Other judges may have a different view, but that's why I'm not fully in support of this concept. Thank you.
Thank you, Rachel. Pam Delabar?
Melanie and I discussed this over breakfast, breaking bread. And I was not as adverse to the concept because in guest judging with different associations, I'm used to dealing with stewards, and stewards must be trained. My concerns with this, one would be the training that somebody would get, the liability of our insurance. I have seen judges that needed immediate help in rings, and it can be frightening. My number one concern, of course, is the safety and the well-being of our cats. Personally, I would like to see in retention, the retaining of judges, us looking at other formats to use our experienced and talented judges, such as looking into a traditional ring where an exhibitor would enter the traditional ring as part of entering the show, and the judge gets to sit, evaluate the cat, fill out a written report to give to the individual. So somebody actually gets a well-informed evaluation of their exhibit, and this could help new people quite a bit. Now, being somebody who has been physically challenged by joint replacement and other things, I understand how this could be a great help. As I said, I'm concerned about, one, medical releases. Secondly, our handling of the cat once they're on the table and how they are returned to the cage. Melanie and I did talk about how the designated handler would be paid. And I said, basically, since the judge is not doing all of their $1.25 or maybe hopefully $1.30's worth of judging, because very honestly, people, we have that cat at least 50% judged by the time we go from the cage to the table, that at least 25 cents per cat comes off of the judge's, or even 30 cents, off of the judge's fee if a designated handler is used. There are several things that could be fleshed out. It may not be as originally presented, but I think possibly we need to look at what programs we can have above, including the designated handler program, but also those other programs such as a traditional ring where you get the written evaluation on your cat. Other things that we can do to retain our judges for as long as possible.
Okay, thank you, Pam. Russell?
I'm in feel the way Pam does. I think it would be, I'm opposed to this, and my vote would be no. We do have in show rules, medical, when the judge gets incapacitated, with the joint problem or whatever, they leave, and then they have to get a medical form from the doctor. So this here, and I think the exhibitors would be opposed to it. I think when you enter a cat show and you hire the judge, you want the judge to actually take the cat to and from the cages, be able to stand behind the table. And this would be, well, if you hire Russell Webb and he has 2 knee problems, he's going to have a handler. How much are we paying the handlers? It's a cost more to the club. The clubs are like my clubs, are just fighting to stay alive. I think we come into a big liability problem here.
Okay, thank you, Russell. George?
I support the motion, but I have concerns, and Pam Delabar already addressed some of them, so I'm not going to repeat it. My other concern is I want to build in safeguards so that this is only used when there are physical limitations on the judge's ability to judge. Sometimes, for example, with old age, physical and mental may go hand in hand. I don't want this to become a crutch to allow judges who maybe shouldn't be judging anymore to keep them on the show table too long. So I think there need to be safeguards built in for that. I do think we need to discuss this with our insurance company in terms of liability, but I agree this ought to go to the judging committee and let them work up a program.
Thank you, George. Kathy? Calhoun?
George pretty much said what I was going to say, and I think this is just the motion to flush out the concept. So I have no problem with that.
Okay, thank you, Kathy. Kenny?
I think somebody had already discussed that. I mean, taking a cat out of the cage and approaching the table. Yeah, Pam had mentioned 50%. Well, maybe not quite that much, but it is part of the artistry of a judge to be able to handle that cat from the time it takes it from the cage, to place it on the table, to actually show it off in its natural state. Now you're going to add an extra pair of hands, and God knows how good that trip to the bench is going to be. And I have serious problems with this. Now you're doubling the amount of hands that touch this cat. There are a lot of insurance situations that I can see that are going to come up. And who makes the final decision as to when somebody leaves? So I can't support this.
Okay, thank you, Kenny. Pam Delbar?
I had one other comment that I forgot to make. Universally, CFA judges are considered the best cat handlers of all of the associations. I could see where a steward / designated handler program could help build someone towards that if they go into the judging program. But I don't want us to lose any credibility or any of our reputation for being the top handlers in the world. Another opinion to the mix here.
Thank you, Pam. Annette Wilson?
Thank you. I didn't like this at first, either from a judging standpoint or an exhibiting standpoint, but as I recall judging for other associations, particularly in Australia, and I know FIFA does this, and anybody that's watched the video from the FIFA World Show sees that there are handlers not only in the rings, but also at the end when they do the best of the best. And I also have seen feedback from exhibitors who have cats of the best, thanking the handlers for presenting their cats so well. And I think this kind of goes into, in conjunction with the handling rings that are already in beta testing. And there's a way there to actually try to figure out, who would be candidates for this. So I'm really not as opposed to it as I thought. I think that another option would be an exhibitor bringing the cat to the table. And I've been at CFA shows where a judge who's not been able to continue all day has asked for the exhibitors to bring the cats to the table. Not always, I think that can be seen multiple ways, but I think that, I lost it. I think that it's I think it's something we should look at. And if it's a way to keep a few more judges who are good judges and have the respect of all of us as exhibitors, I think it's worth looking at. Thank you.
Carol?
Yes, I am not in favor of this concept. I agree with some of the earlier comments about our judges being renowned for being the best handlers in the world, highly respected for that. And I think this is a major deviation from the format of our shows. Do we want to have our format be the same as other associations such as FIFA or those in Australia? I don't think that would be well received by the exhibitors here. And as an exhibitor, I like to see the judge take my cat out of the ring and place it on the table. I like to see all the handling done by that judge. And one other point is that we do have a rule in place, a show rule in place, that will allow for a handler in the case of a judge being injured or incapacitated at the show. So there already is a provision for that in place.
Thank you, Carol. Mike?
I just want to say, I think this is what some of the comments sound like we're getting a little bit ahead of ourselves. We're not saying this is going to start up in a month or at the beginning of next season. This is to allow the committee to come up with something for us to approve again later. And we're also not talking about this as far as impact on how this is perceived by exhibitors. This is presumably going to be a rare event. We're not suddenly going to have handlers for every judge and every ring at every show. This will come up once in a while as a judge is going through a hopefully temporary medical challenge. We've already seen examples where a judge is coming off surgery and they're able to judge, but they've been told not to lift more than 10 pounds. So they have the exhibitors come and get the larger cats out of cages, things like that. I don't see where this is such a radical change that we can't say, yes, let's at least take a little bit more of a look at it.
Okay, Mike, thank you. Melanie, I think there may be a little bit of challenge with the motion because you're requesting the board to approve the designated handler program concept, which we don't even know the full concept, but it's for presentation at the board meeting. And what I'm hearing is some board members are in favor of your committee to flesh this out and come to the board in December with a full concept that addresses all questions and concerns. That's my understanding of what I'm hearing. You have the closing statements on this. I will call the motion for the vote, but I'll allow you to go ahead and make your closing comments.
Okay, thank you. First of all, thank you all. I really appreciate the spirited discussion. And the bottom line is, Rich, I am more than happy to withdraw this as a motion if and when I have an idea of where the board stands. Fleshing this program out will be a significant amount of work. If it's not going to gain board approval, then frankly, I've got other things on the triage list that I can put my resources to work. I don't even have support for this program completely in my committee. We're split on it. So I really, really appreciate the comments I have. I'd like to summarize very quickly what I picked up and make sure I didn't miss anything. We're concerned about the training for the handlers. We're concerned about the liability. Safety and well-being of the cats is super important. That goes, it's 100% the top of the list. That we should be looking for other formats under the same idea, like a traditional ring, which I couldn't agree with more for our outgoing judges. There are some concerns about how we're going to compensate our judges. We need to build in safeguards to identify the reasons why this program would be implemented. And going back to what Mike said, this should be a one, it shouldn't be happening often. And then we're concerned about a reputation as the fact that we are indeed considered top handlers around the world, and we don't want to jeopardize that. So those were the major takeaways I got from this, which are significant, and I really appreciate it. I am more than willing to withdraw the motion if I can get a straw poll, Rich. Is that all right, to get a feel? Because if I don't have a majority of this board, I don't want to break this program out.
Shelley, can we do a straw poll if we've got a motion on the floor?
I don't see why not. There is nothing in the rules that says you can't poll the people as part of discussion.
Okay, so just to be clear, if you are interested in supporting Melanie's motion, which is all she's asking for is her board, her committee to do the work to present to the board in December this concept. It's not approving the concept, it's allowing the committee to present their concept to the board in December. Please raise your hands. Okay, I have Kathy Calhoun, Paula, George, Pam Mosier, Mark Hannon, Mike Shelton, Hayat Hassan, Pam Delabark, Kathy Dunham, John, Annette, Sharon. Melanie, we've got more than a majority on this, so I'm going to go ahead and call this motion as it's written. Okay.
You can, or we can pull it and I'll simply work on this program for December. It's up to you.
Your choice. It's your
I'd
motion.
rather, withdraw. I mean, the motion's kind of a nothing motion. I mean, it was really just to get the information that you all gave us, which I really, really appreciate. So I'm fine with withdrawing it, Rich. I have no
Okay.
problem.
And you're
And
gonna
I'll withdraw
continue
my
to work-
second.
Okay, very good. Thank you. And you're going to continue to work on the program.
Yeah,
based
I
on the
would,
proposal.
if I may have just, I would like to ask that Pam Delabar and perhaps someone like George might be willing to work on this, on the breakout committee on this, to at least edit what we pull together so that we can get some outside eyes.
I will give you whatever help you ask for.
Thank you, George.
And Pam.
Me too.
Very good.
Thank you. I just like some different perspectives from different areas, et cetera. So I appreciate it. Thank you.
Okay, Melanie.
Excellent. All right. Okay, so now we get into the meat of the matter here. And the bottom line is we all know it. We've lost an alarming number of judges in the past few years. Shoot, we've lost an alarming number of judges in the last couple meetings. Our numbers continue to dwindle. We heard in June, the board loud and clear, when we were told we needed to address that attrition rate. And while these changes to the judging program rules may seem overwhelming when you look at them initially, essentially it breaks down to 3 sections. Housekeeping, where we adjusted formatting, et cetera, but didn't substantially change the content or the meaning. Additions, where we folded that associate program in so that all of our requirements all are in one place, one source. And we didn't change the requirements on the associate program. We simply worked with what the board has already approved. We then added a section on the associate program as to how we would envision folding associate program judges into the regular program should they choose to apply. And that would be section 5. And lastly, the section where we address the challenge that we felt we were given, which is how to make our requirements less cumbersome and provide more options to applicants without lowering our standards. And those changes were primarily encompassed in section 2 of the judging program rules. So lots of changes here. Rachel did an amazing job color coding them. I have the little thing somewhere that tells me which color is what. Rachel, which color is what? Green is new, I believe.
Purple is housekeeping, and the changes are in green. Sorry, policy changes blue, additions in green.
That's right. Got it. All right. So Mark, you have a question? Oh, sorry, Rich. I'm sorry.
It's okay. Go ahead, Mark.
I fear that Melanie's ice cream is melting. What I'd like to do is, since we had a special meeting, I believe it was Thursday night, with the board to go through all of these. I'm hoping that we can dispense with a lengthy discussion of this, since we've already discussed it offline, and just go to the vote.
Let me just ask those board members who could not attend the Thursday meeting, did you have any questions for Melanie in comments? And if you do, let's try to keep them short and concise. Pam Delabar?
I could not attend another 3 a.m. in the morning meeting. And yes, I do have comments. I don't
Okay.
have questions. I do have comments.
Okay.
Am I allowed to go through with my comments?
Yep.
For section 1 with the definitions, several were definitely needed. When we get to section 2, I cannot support the exhibitor coming forward. As I said, we have incredible credibility throughout the world with our judges. We get invited to participate in other association shows because they value our expertise and our opinions. We will, and I can state this with some fact, lose that credibility if we take away the requirement for somebody to be a breeder and only accept them into the judging program as an exhibitor. That would be the option 2 throughout the second session. Going to 2.8 for second specialty exhibiting requirements. When we had the focus group back in 2019, before the international show, one of the things that came up, especially from our table in the focus group, was the fact that people could not afford to become judges. And requiring people to spend money to go get titles on cats is spending more money and is discouraging people to come into the judging program, because they're looking not only at that first specialty, they're going into the second specialty and hopefully finally to all breed judges. The custodial care, having the mentor being a big brother, many of our people here in Europe have mentors that are over in the US. Now, as much as we'd like to get them over all the time, especially to judge our shows, that's really not going to be a really valid requirement for somebody who has custodial care. I don't think there's a single breeder especially over here, that would allow a cat to go into a situation where they consider there might be a problem with the custodial care of that cat. I've always had a problem with the European Region 9 judges having, and of course, Japan as well, having to go to the US to do color classes. Prior to the end of February of this year, we had cases where we had judges judging 15 Abyssinian grands and others for the Cat Fanciers of Finland show. It's almost 50-50 now in short hairs. It used to be that long hairs greatly outnumbered short hairs, and now the short hairs are really coming forward.
Pam, did you cover all your comments?
No. I'm flipping through here right away. Accelerated process. We have not had anybody apply to the accelerated process since we brought that in. I think it was 2019, early 2020. Nobody. Why do we still have this on the books when it seems to be a dead program? Section 3 needs to be taken out and totally reworked. I have tier 1 guest judges who have read through section 3 and basically have said, hell no. This is taking people that we bring on as all breed judges and then asking them to go back to double specialty. And that's after they do 3 color classes in each specialty. That is just totally out of whack. I think that all of section 3 needs to be pulled and reworked. I have no problem with associate judging. Just the only thing is that we did not require a person to apply for the associate program. We did not require them to have the BAOS. but we were anxious to see if they had attended a BOS or a seminar. So you have my comments.
Thank you, Pam. Penny?
I too was unable to join you because of 100-mile-an-hour wind gusts and a Category 1 hurricane on top of my house. The major thing that I was objecting to through this, and first of all, let me say I appreciate the amount of work that has gone into this. I think it does give a lot of people a different avenue as far as getting into the judging program. I do think, and I agree with Pam, that you need breeding experience. You need to go through the trials and tribulations of birthing kittens, raising kittens, and showing success with your pedigreed cats. I also agree with Pam to ask judges who have judged for CFA as guest judges in an all-breed capacity, say 20, 25 shows, to ask them to go back to specialty status is an absolute insult. You'll never be able to get them to come over into our association. But if they're popular enough to be asked that many times, perhaps we should consider putting them in at least approval pending all breed. But that's not for me to decide. But other than that, I want to thank the JPC for being so concise on correcting this. It does kind of open things up for people, and it's not as daunting as it has been in the past to enter the CFA judging program. Thank you.
Thanks, Kenny. John?
I too was unable to attend the meeting because of personal business. I kind of discouraged about the breeding because what did you learn from 0 to 4 months? When I went through the program, there was a lot of expectations on breeding, breed and breed. Even my regional director asked me to breed and breed. I did really well in selling kittens. Let me tell you, pet kittens. That's my only comment.
Thank you, John. Kenny, can you put your hand down, please? George?
Yeah, I'm going to agree with John and disagree with Kenny and Pam Delabar. Birth and babies is only of limited utility when you're supposed to be judging a cat as it appears on the table today. Yes, it's good to have some knowledge of the development of the cats, gives you a sense of the arc of their growth, especially when judging kittens, so you can see various stages of development. But I think we are currently still overemphasizing breeding as the way in. And the other thing I want to mention is breeding is not possible in some parts of the country right now. Breeder bans in some communities, restrictions on the number of cats you're allowed to have in your house have greatly diminished the opportunities for breeding in CFA. And if these people can successfully exhibit, if they show they can handle their cats well, they can groom their cats well, they have the eye to pick out the right cats and good cats, I don't think they should automatically be excluded from the judging program simply because local law does not allow them to be breeders or local limit laws do not allow them to maintain a population to meet the breeding requirements. I think it's important that we reach out to those people and make them part of CFA. This is not saying that we need to accept unqualified people who have never bred. What it's saying is there ought to be a path in addition to one based primarily on breeding to one that's based primarily on exhibiting. If people can show they have the eye through exhibiting, they can still be good judges. And I support that portion of the report. In fact, I support the report in general.
Thank you, George. Pam, you have additional comments?
One additional comment. It goes back to the breeding thing. And yes, the Europeans have been dealing with fewer cats and yet having very excellent breeding programs in working together. There are some severe breeder restrictions going on in Europe, yet they still go. One thing that separates a judge from others is the concept, what I like to call eggs and bacon. The chicken is involved. The pig is committed. Our judges have shown commitment from day one, working up as breeders, as clerks, as master clerks, and going through the judging program. And this is one of the things that gives us the credibility worldwide. I don't want to see us lose that.
Okay, Pam, thank you. Melanie, you can comment on all these, but I just want to remind
Carol has her hand up.
Oh, I'm sorry, I missed Carol. Go ahead, Carol.
And yes, I agree with Pam Delabar's comments. I think there are things that you learn as a breeder and experience you gain as a breeder as to the development, structure, other issues that may occur with the breed that you cannot possibly learn from being an exhibitor or from a textbook or from a course on animal husbandry. It's not the same as being hands-on. And the other comment I wanted to make is that in the section on where it states somebody could enter as being an exhibitor, the requirement is just to exhibit for 7 years, which is, and the breeding end of it is to have bred for 5 years. I think there's definitely a disparity there. I think if we were to accept this, we should require more exhibiting experience than what is written out in this report. Thank you.
Annette?
Thank you. I'm going to support these changes. I remember when breeding for your second specialty was required, and I had to put my Russian blue breeding program on hold so I could breed a couple of litters of Persians. Other than the fact that I got a very nice kitten in one of those litters, that was a waste of my time, basically, because when I started learning about Persians was when I started showing the Persians. I think that we've added so many additional ways to learn over time for the judging program requirements. We've added the BAOS since then. Now we have the handling rings. We have just a myriad of ways to learn. As far as custodial care, I showed a Cornish Rex that lived in my house. I showed a Burman that lived in my house. I had no trouble having people give me good cats to show. And that's how I learned the different breeds. We require a way for our applicants to show that they've gained knowledge of the breeds and how to handle them. In my opinion, you get that knowledge from showing them. I think there's a lot of different ways here for people to come into the judging program. And as George said, I think that we evaluate each one of them based on their qualifications at the time they're brought forward. That's all.
Thank you, Annette. Melanie, do you want to respond to some of the comments? And I do want to remind the board, though Melanie has pointed out her action item is a motion, I don't believe we have a second.
George will
Rachel
second if there
seconds.
isn't one.
I got George as a second. Okay, Melanie.
I hear you, Pam, for sure, and whoever, and Carol. First and foremost, I'm a breeder, and I believe personally in breeding. But you know, one of the things that we talk about with CFA is our inability to embrace change and evolution and the reality of our new world. And our new world out here is vastly different than what we had even 10 or 15 years ago. And while I personally have a deep-seated respect for breeders, and I feel like when you're a really good breeder in your own breed, that carries over to other breeds. I think that there are many different ways to get to the same destination. You can take the direct route on the interstate, you can go on the side roads, whatever. We need to start looking at those different avenues and different routes. And if we don't start doing that, we're going to put ourselves into a situation where we're obsolete. So is this an ideal situation? Of course not. I'd love for things to be like they were in the old days. But you know what? We aren't in the old days. We're in a brand new world. And right now we've got less than 65 judges in the US. We're under 100 judges worldwide. And many of those judges aren't even active. Do I want to lower our standards? Absolutely not. We were tasked with bringing you all solutions to dealing with this attrition rate that would give people options, yet not lower our standards. We've done our best to do that. I certainly would be open to increasing the number of years someone needed to exhibit if that's a major sticking point, Carol. But other than that, I think that the Judging Program Committee did a really good job of trying really hard to maintain our high standards. And CFA certainly has incredibly high standards, in my opinion. And I am very, very cognizant of that. And I in no way ever want to degrade those. So that's where I am. Carol? Oh, sorry, Rich.
Go ahead, Carol.
Yes, well, now there are a couple of things that I have a problem with. For the most part, I support many of these changes. Are we going to be voting on each section as a whole? Or are we going to be
my hope was
sections
in total?
out? Are we taking certain sections out and voting on those? Because I can support some things, but not all things. I also wanted to comment in the associate judging section. There is no provision for an exhibitor entry into that portion of the judging. So to me, that seems a bit unfair to people that might be interested in that avenue of getting into the judging program.
Melanie?
Yeah, because many of these sections are interchanged or intertwined, changed is the wrong word, intertwined. If we were to vote on one section and it was passed and another section was not, in many instances, not all, but in many instances, we would then come up with inconsistencies in the programs. My hope is to put this to the board as a whole. And if we have issues, then we would come back with another option.
Okay. Pam Delabar?
I was just going to ask on section 3, I cannot, if we're voting on this in total, I cannot vote to support those ideas that I do like. But as long as we continue to have section 3, I'm trying to bring us judges. I have three possible judges coming over that would be stopped by the provisions of what we have in section 3. And these are people who have judged for us, even in the US, they have judged worldwide, and they are tier 1 judges. And I cannot support section 3. It's like, it's arrogance on CFA's part to consider these people to be lesser if they change from one association to another.
Okay, Rachel?
Thank you, Pam. I wanted to go back to what Carol said about section 4, the associate judge requirements. This entire section is our existing requirements, just put into rules language. Now, when you add it to the master document, it points out things just like what Carol pointed out, that there are discrepancies between what we require for one class versus another class. So, this was that was a great observation. I think that's something we can look at. We're also going to be looking at expanding that program, perhaps to double specialty, perhaps to even an associate all breed status someday. So to me, section 4 is the one that's the most in flux. And also section 3, I think our input from Region 9 and the ID is going to be very important in that. Let me point out, please, that we continue to solicit suggestions from our exhibitor base, from whatever source would like to give us input on creative ideas to expand our program. To my knowledge, I've never directly gotten one. All of this comes from within the committee in brainstorming sessions. So, again, I'd like to reiterate that the judging program is always looking for input. And many of these things are things that we would have loved to have heard in advance so that we could incorporate them. Thank you.
Thank you, Rachel. Melanie?
Yeah, in answer to section 3, we've made no changes to the judging program rules as they stand. I can tell you that if that is a concern, we can certainly look at it for our next iteration and put it on a list to do that. But if you look at section 3, what we're proposing to you is unchanged from what is already approved.
Okay, thank you, Melanie. George?
Yeah, Melanie said what I was going to say. Pam, if you look at section 3, the changes we are making from the existing section 3 are things like changing judging committee to JPC or changing will required to must. These are just housekeeping changes. I think most of your objections are to section 3 as it exists now in the rules. And that's not what we're voting on. We're only voting on the changes.
Thank you, George. Pam?
My input was, I was told my input was no longer needed after the June annual meeting with the judging program. I have always thought that this, and this goes back to when we had somebody come over from Region 9 and was told that that person would be a double specialty judge. Therefore, did not accept the, I guess I want to say the relegation from Albury to double specialty, and has since been put on the cannot judge, guest judge for CFA list. I have been totally against this for a long time, but when my opinion was no longer needed, I had told some people this needed to be changed. Otherwise, if you want these judges to come in and come over and continue judging our shows, except this time with the label as CFA judge instead of tier 1 guest judge, then we need to change it.
Pam, thank you for those comments. I think they meant a lot to Melanie, Rachel, and the rest of the committee, and they will take those seriously. I'm seeing no other hands are up. Melanie, do you have any amendments to your motion, or we're going with it as is?
Going with it as is.
Okay, very good. I am going to call for vote on this. Those in favor of this motion, please raise your hand. Okay, as I call your hand, do not take your hand down until I instruct the whole group to take their hands down. What happens is when somebody removes their hand, my screen moves, and then I lose track of whose hands are up. I have George Eigenhauser, Rachel Anger, John Kalila, Annette Wilson, Pam Mosier, Mike Shelton, Sharon Roy, Kathy Calhoun, Yokika Hayata, Russell Webb, Mark Hannon, Melanie Morgan, Kathy Dunham, Paula Noble. Please raise your hand. Those are the yes votes. If you are opposed, please raise your hand. I have Pam Delabar, Carol Krasnowski. Please lower your hand. If you're an abstention, please raise your hand. I have Kenny Curley. Lower your hand. Rachel, please announce the votes.
14 yes votes, 2 no votes, 1 abstention.
Thank you, Rachel. The motion has passed. Melanie, what do you
Thank
have
you all.
next?
And again, the feedback that I received on that, we'll go back and we'll relook at the associate program and any inconsistencies on an exhibitor versus whatever option. Thank you, Carol, for that. And we'll look at section 3 as a rewrite moving forward. So I appreciate the feedback there. I would also like to point out that yesterday at our international meeting, which I thought was a fabulous meeting, by the way, that there were several issues that were brought up, and I think Rachel alluded to them. Our committee will also be looking at allowing the T1, 2, or 3 judges outside, being allowed to judge potentially outside their approved areas within Asia or other areas such as India. We'll also be looking at providing avenues for moving into double specialty potentially, or even all breed on the associate. But at this point, every associate judge who's come in has signed a an acknowledgement saying that they understand that they will be single specialty only. And at this point, that's where the program is. And then reiterating once again that fund shows are approved for all associate judges for any quote unquote specialty, meaning they can judge long hairs and short hairs regardless of what they have been approved to be an associate judge for. And we will be looking at whether associate judges should be would be allowed to judge fund shows outside their approved areas, and we'll get back to the board. And that concludes the open session of the judging program report.
Melanie, I want to say thank you and great job to you and Rachel, Vicky, Loretta, everybody on your entire committee. And thank you for inviting me to a couple of your meetings to take me through it and understand what was going on. You've all done an amazing job with this program, and it is great to see that the committee has come together in presenting such great changes that will hopefully pay dividends to CFA and all the participants. So wonderful job to you and your committee. Thank you so much. Mark? I'm sorry.
I just want to point out that they did finish early, and she does get her ice cream.
She did. She finished early.
And all credit goes to the committee. They worked really hard on this. So thank you all for listening to the results of that hard work.
Yeah, it's great. Thank you. Okay, our next agenda item is the treasurer's report. Kathy Calhoun, I think you have the next 4 items here.
Oh dear. Okay. So before we get started, Aline, I believe Bob Zinda was in the audience. Can you promote him to panelist? Because when we get to the international division report, each chair will have an opportunity to speak.
I sure will. And he is in the audience.
Great. Thank you. Thank you. Okay, so the treasurer's report. This is the report that's produced 6 times a year. I typically keep it in the same format. In this report, I would like to call the board's attention to 3 particular items. The one first being registration being the number 1 category for income for CFA. It's all about registration. And while our numbers for litter registrations are up 4.5%, our numbers for individuals are down 4.8, which takes it to a total of being down 1.6%. I just want to add a little caveat. This is something that we need to keep a very, very close eye on. Registration, we are not seeing growth in many parts of the world. More, as we just finished with the judging program, more judges, more shows, more clubs that produce shows, drives more interest in CFA it drives more registration. So I think we need to keep our eye on that and move positively in all those areas. Arlene, if you would scroll down a bit toward the last page, the second item there with the annual, I'm sorry, page 55. Yeah, there, right there. We have preliminary numbers on the annual. I do know there will be additional income, not a great amount, but there's some additional income coming in. We've got at least 2 sources that I'm aware of. So that number will improve. We probably have some outstanding expenses, but I just think we just need to be mindful of our estimate around about the Ward's banquets, and cost us about roughly $100,000. We're at 97.9, almost $98,000 in cost. Keeping in mind that those costs are pure banquet and awards, the Friday, Saturday, and Sunday portion of the, actually Friday and Saturday. Hello. Sorry about that. It does not include the board member expense. So the expenses for the board, travel and hotel meals, is an additional $45,000. Just keep an eye on, as we keep an eye on registration, we need to keep an eye on these large events and expenses, and perhaps ways that we can save a dollar here or there. Eileen, if you just scroll down to the very last, the bottom line, we're not favorable. Through August, we lost almost $76,000. We're $76,000 negative. There's been a lot of factors. A lot of things could change as the year progresses. I just think that we just need to be mindful of what we spend and do everything we can do to grow that top number. Are there any questions? Pam Delabar. I'm sorry, Rich.
That's okay. Go ahead, Pam.
Okay.
Kathy, just one thing on registrations, an interesting fact for my region, and basically Region 9 leads all the other regions in registration numbers and has since like 2014. Right now, we have areas that are coming up, but our largest registrations are coming out of Russia. And I find that just to be just unbelievable, considering the financial constraints and sanctions that we have with Russia and the rest of the world. So we are trying to keep registrations up, but it's just unbelievable that Russia still remains our highest level of registrations within Region 9. That's it.
Thank you, Pam.
Thank
Anybody?
you, Pam. I would actually like to toss out a challenge to the regional directors as far as increasing registration in their areas. Not a dollar amount, but maybe a percentage. I think one of the things that we don't realize how important it is, just to be kind. I'm not speaking to the regional directors specifically, but to be kind and nice to each other, to be engaging and draw people in and give them opportunities to participate actively. Reading, showing, exhibiting. I think a helpful hand goes a long way, and our mentoring program is well suited for that.
Thank you, Kathy. Anybody else have any questions for Kathy on the treasurer's report? Okay, Kathy, go ahead and do the next item.
Okay, so planning how we're going to spend the money. The budget report, again, I start this in October. You'll see the same report in December. You'll see the report in February. The dates, the critical dates for everyone with a committee are in the section, scroll down just a little bit. Input. if you desire, if your committee would like to make a request for a change in this season's budget, we need to have that for the December meeting, because it will go to a full board vote. So that's the opportunity for changes to this year's budget. Once that is done, we go into the planning stages for next year. And your committee budget requests are due on January 2nd. In order to do all of the things that we need to do, we need to have those budgets in on time. And then we outlined the steps moving forward, and we have a preliminary review of the budget scheduled for March 14th, so that in April, at the April meeting, we can vote on an approved budget. Are there questions?
No questions, Kathy. Let's move on to the next one.
Please be timely, please. All right, diversity and inclusion. In our August report, we outlined our objectives for 2022, 2023. So this meeting, we are focusing on number one, the baseline assessment. We don't know where we're going unless we know where we've been. So it was a separate report that, a separate document rather, that outlined a questionnaire that we would like to present to the FANCY so that we can better understand where we are and what do we need to do. There's some questions in there about mobility and those sorts of things that is also critical to our shows and being able to be supportive of all people. Hopefully you've read this report and you looked at the survey, and I have a board action item.
Please read it
Unless there's questions.
Please read the motion, Kathy.
The motion is to approve the distribution of the diversity and inclusion poll/survey. The survey's content is included in this report and is a part of this motion.
May I have a second, please?
George seconds.
Thank you, George. Discussion? I have a question for Shelley. Shelley, do you have any issues or concerns with the poll? I'm sorry, the survey?
No, I reviewed the survey already and it comports with surveys in the industry all across the board. So I don't see any legal issues with that survey.
Wonderful, thank you. Anybody else have any questions or comments for Kathy on the survey? Are there any objections? Raise your hand. Okay, I'm going to call for the vote because I saw an objection. All those in favor, please raise your hand. Okay, remember, please do not take your hand down until I ask you to take your hand down. George, all those in favor are George Eichenhauser, Melanie Morgan, Carol Krasnowski, Annette Wilson, Russell Webb, Kenny Curley, Pam Delabar, Rachel Anger, John Colilla, Sharon Roy, Paula Noble, Mike Shelton, Kathy Dunham, Kathy Calhoun, Yokiko Hayata-san, and Pam Mosier. Please lower your hand. All those opposed, please raise your hand. Mark Hannon, lower your hand. Are there any abstentions? No abstentions. Rachel, please announce the vote.
That's 16 yes, 1 no, 0 abstentions. I really wanted to get to that abstention.
Okay, very good. The motion has passed. Kathy, what else do you have?
The next one would be the ID.
Okay, we'll move on to ID.
Okay. All right. So yesterday we had the International Council meeting via Zoom. We had a total of, with panelists and people in the audience, we had up to 72 people globally participating in this Zoom meeting. I think it was very productive. We received a lot of input. We will be putting together a list of action items post once we look at the notes and whatnot in our personal notes, so that we can probably like establish, similar to how we're doing in other committees, properly 1 to 3 to 4 things that we would work on this season. And hopefully we can get some things accomplished. So I would like to thank everybody who attended that Zoom meeting, the board members, the central office, everybody that made that go so smoothly and successfully. Thank you very, very much. Eileen, if you can go back.
Which area?
So we're going to go to China. I don't think Wayne is, I didn't see Wayne in the audience.
I'm here.
But John, yes. Take it away, John.
Okay. There's really not much activity in China. Right now, we have 2 shows scheduled this month, and hopefully they will take off. With COVID, a lot of area has been closed down. So hopefully this will be the start of China having shows on a regular basis. We managed to hopefully straighten out the NGO process. They need to get approval by both Wayne and myself. I also started a spreadsheet to keep track of all the shows that are going on in China. We need to be able to identify which territory they belong to, so we will not have 2 shows in the same territory like we did last year. And that's all I have for right now.
Thank you, John. Yeah, that's been great work. And I think we're really fostering a sense of collaboration with our China team. All right, Bob.
Hey, good morning. Actually, everything that's in the written report that you're seeing, well, whenever we get down to wherever it's at, can you bring up the Asia portion?
There, it's there.
Oh, it is? Okay. I'm seeing it. Okay. It just looks different. The only thing that's different than what's in the written report is I wanted to add that we now have 2 5x5 10-ring shows scheduled for Malaysia, sponsored by the Hong Kong and Macau Cat Club. And we're going to do the very first show, CFA show in Vietnam, in Hanoi on December the 10th. In addition to that, I have been using my Groups IO CFA Asia Except China mailing list to just to keep the folks, to keep them on their toes about things that aren't going quite as they should be, like late show license applications, when things like the sponsorship requests need to come in, those kind of things. And I've included Kathy on that mailing list, as well as all the country coordinators. But other than that, everything else is in the written report that you say have on the screen.
Thank you. Thank you, Bob.
You're welcome.
Kenny?
Hi, everyone. Our focus right now is on India. Right now, the only CFA club in India is planning to have a show the second weekend of November. And we have 2 of our judges who've been there before representing our association. We have the Kuwait Club. Just got notice 2 days ago. They are planning to have a joint show with the Saudi Arabian Club the first weekend in March to be a 10-ring show. And we also had an inquiry from a group in Morocco. And I've got French-speaking people. Well, Olivier Grin is helping with the translation there, so we can maybe get a club in Northern Africa. I haven't heard a whole lot from Egypt. They're really suffering financially at this point. but everything seems to be starting to wake up in the Middle East. And we certainly hope that the new club is approved that's coming in from India. We agreed in our committee that the best way to approach India is just to fill it up with CFA clubs and people that want to participate. And that's all I've got.
Thank you, Kenny. Is Matthew? Matthew is just invaluable. He has really we keep him up all night long. We make him translate things that are like 15 minutes of conversation, and he does a fabulous job keeping the pulse, you know, the eye on his areas. Matthew, I didn't know if you had anything you wanted to add.
No, nothing to add. Thank you.
Okay. All right. Anybody have questions? All right. Well, thank you.
Kathy, great job to you and your committee for all the work that you're doing. I like how you've broken it down into different areas and assigned the different individuals. So wonderful job to you and everybody. Thank you.
Thank you.
We will move on to the next agenda item, and that is publications. Mark?
The publications report is broken down into the various types of publications we have, such as the brochures, Cat Talk magazine, the newsletter, and the yearbook. I have no action items. I assume everybody's read the report. Are there any questions? Okay, that's all I have for that committee. I think I have the next one.
Yep, go ahead.
Keep going. Next is the CFA International Cat Show. East is the committee because there's potential for a CFA International Cat Show West, which is not under my committee. Ed Raymond and I are chair of the committee. We've changed the name to reflect the fact that it's more than just a cat show. So it'll be referred to as a CFA International Cat Show and Expo. I do have a couple action items, if Aline will scroll down to them. I guess what you need. The first one is I make a motion that we have 2 rings, 1 each day for limited to opens and champions and opens and premieres. This was originally approved for the 2022 show, which was canceled, and several clubs have already tried it, and we have 2 more requests to be considered at this meeting for clubs. The original intention was for it to be for a large event. So I make a motion.
Rachel makes a standing second.
Oh, thank you, Rachel. Okay, is there any discussion or questions for Mark? Mark, I don't see any questions or comments coming. Is there any, oh, Pam Delabar, clearly understand Mark's motion.
Mark's motion, first motion is to have an additional ring each day for Open Championship, Open Premiership. Must already be entered in the show.
That's correct. Okay, I just want to make sure you had that motion.
Of course, I'm doing notes.
I know. You are a great note taker. Thank you.
Thank you.
Kenny.
Yeah, I just wanted to, I'm in support of this. I just wanted to point out that these OCP rings are very, very popular. We've had 2 in my region.
Thank you, Kenny. Are there any objections to this first motion? Seeing no objections, this motion passes unanimously. Mark, let's do your second motion.
I move that we have 2 shows with 8 rings each, 5 Albury's, 3 specialties.
Okay, Rachel has got a standing second. Is there any questions or comments for Mark? Pam?
Mark, there. Mark, will this include the super specialties as they tried in the past?
We didn't include this. If you want, we can consider it, but at this point, we're
Oh,
just
no,
talking
thank
about.
you. No, thank you. I just wanted to clarify that.
Okay.
Any other questions or comments for Mark? Any objections to Mark's second motion? Please raise your hand. Seeing no objections, this motion passes unanimously. Mark, third motion?
As I mentioned in my report, we're going to do we're going to have the clubs re-vote on judges since it's been 3 to 4 years since they voted on judges. We kept canceling the shows, and rather than go with a 4-year-old selection, we're going to re-ballot. The motion is to have 2 shows, to have 16 judges with the greatest number of votes be selected to judge the show. And the next 2 in line would be judging the Open Champions Open Premier Specialty.
And the 3 judges with the greatest number of votes will select the best in show.
Right, which what we've done for a number of years now.
Okay. And Rachel has her standing second. Is there a question, Pam Delabar?
Why are you kicking those of us who have patiently waited to do the show? Now, I'm going to have to abstain on this because I was one of the judges that was supposed to judge the show in 2020, 2021, 2022, and been patiently waiting to enjoy this experience, as have several of the others. Any special reason besides aging? And if we have judges that are no longer on our judging panel, we can move up those that were on the wait list per se, alternates. Just want to know why those of us who have been patiently waiting to do this show that keeps getting canceled, why we weren't, so-called notified that this was going to happen to us and that we can just tear up all our contracts.
Well, you're making the assumption that with a fresh vote, you will not be included. As I pointed out to you several years ago, when we did the vote and we broke it out by areas, that had we just done this process of the 18 with the most votes, you would have been included anyway. You didn't get in just because you live in Europe, and we had specified one of the judges had to be from Europe. We wanted the current thinking of the clubs. A lot's changed in the past few years, and from year to year, many of the same judges are selected with a couple of variations. We just wanted current input from the clubs.
Okay, Melanie?
Thank you. I'm somewhat uncomfortable bringing this up as I'm one of the judges who was contracted for the previous event as well. And like Pam, I'll be abstaining. But I do have to mention that it's not just those of us who are here on the board who are bringing up the question. I've been contacted by a couple exhibitors and also some of the judges who are not on the board with their concerns about the fact that they held their contracts year after year in good faith. There will be some openings on the slate, and we could certainly call a vote for those, which would give the opportunity to the clubs to select new fresh blood if they wanted. And I don't think Pam, well, I don't want to speak for Pam, but I certainly am not speaking for myself in terms of whether I will or will not be back on, but simply about just the respect of honoring the contracts that were there.
Okay, thank you, Melanie. Kathy Cahoon? You're on mute.
Apologize. I question this approach as well because, and I will abstain as well, but there are people who may have held this date and made other arrangements for things that may be going on in their lives to hold the date open for this event. The majority of clubs, just clubs that had shows that were, at least in my reference, my point of view, or my experience, clubs have just rolled the judges over and asked them back for the next event. I can see both sides, but it does seem a bit awkward. Thank
Okay.
you.
Thank you, Kathy. Pam Delabar?
I was just going to say, Melanie actually stated much better than I was trying to get. Not that I'm not expecting or am expecting. I am just, excuse me, somewhat concerned of the fact that our commitment does not mean all that much.
Thank you, Pam. Pam Mosier?
Yeah, I think that also, each year I know that Rachel reached out to the current judges that had been selected and said, would you like to drop off? Are you still interested in doing this? So they have the opportunity to drop off. And also they can, there's a number of judges that are no longer, because of retirement or whatever, are not on there. So there's another opportunity for those that got the amount of votes to move up. So, I'm kind of going on the side here of how, Melanie and Pam Delabar feel.
Thank you, Pam. George?
Yeah, I'm going to side with Mark on this. I think that if a show gets canceled, the judging contracts are voided. There's no entitlement on the part of the judges to get hired for any future show. On the other hand, people's perceptions of judges changes over time. A judge that was popular 3 years ago or 2 years ago or 1 year ago may not be as popular among the exhibitors today. I would rather reopen it, and if it's the same judges, great. If it's not the same judges, great. But it should be up to the people that are exhibiting now to make a decision about which judges they prefer now, rather than be locked into something we did in the past.
Thank you, George. Any additional questions or comments from Mark? Mark, do you want to comment on some of the comments you received?
Of course.
Go ahead.
First of all, the show's over a year off. So I think few, if any, of those judges that were selected already have plans that they've canceled or are not accepted because they have a commitment to judge this show in 2023. If the decision is to go with the previous selected slate, then the logic to me would be for those that are no longer judging, Wayne Harding, for example, we would just go down to that old list and pick the next in line rather than reballot just for the vacancies.
Any other comments, Mark?
Nope.
Okay, so if you want to reballot, you vote yes. If you do not want to reballot and do what Mark just explained, go down the existing list that was approved back in 2020, I believe. You are to vote no. I will call for the vote. If you're in favor of this motion, please raise your hand. I have George Eigenhauser, Mark Hannon, Carol Krasnowski, Mike Shelton, John Kalila, Annette Wilson. Please lower your hand. If you are opposed to this motion, please raise your hand. I have Kathy Dunham, Paula Noble, Pam Mosier. Please lower your hand. If you are an abstention, please raise your hand. Melanie Morgan, Kenny Curley, Rachel Anger, Sharon Roy, Russell Webb, Pam Delabar, Kathy Calhoun.
It looks like abstention 1.
Yeah. Please lower your hand. Rachel, please announce the vote.
That's 6 yes votes, 3 no votes, 7 abstentions. So I'm missing somebody. Oh,
Yeah,
Hayata? I don't have a
Yukiko.
vote for Yukiko.
Yeah,
And
yes,
your vote was yes.
yes.
So that's 7 yes, 3 no, 7 abstentions.
So this motion passes, correct?
That's correct. Thank you.
Okay. Okay, Mark. Your motion passed. You have anything additional you'd like to discuss?
Nope.
Okay, thank you. We will move on to the next agenda item. That is annual meeting site selection. Kathy Dunham.
Thank you. The report is presented here. What we are asking the board to consider is the amendment to Article 4 of the bylaws, which would allow a little more freedom for central office to look in the geographic areas within regions 1 through 7. This would allow us to maybe do a location, the same location for multiple years, or pick 2 or 3 locations that might work better 2 or 3 years in a row. We're just trying to make sure that the properties that we pick meet the criteria that we need and keep the expenses for attendees in a reasonable range. Our motion is to approve the above amendment to the bylaws to be sponsored by the CFA Board of Directors and presented to the delegation at the 2023 annual meeting.
May I have a second, please?
I'll second, Russell.
Thank you, Russell. Discussion? Pam Delaware?
Is there a reason why we are voting on this today and not like in February or even in April? We have plenty of time to bring up till the 15th of April to bring up this amendment to our bylaws. Is there a reason that it has to be done today? Because situations can change between, in the next 4 or 5 months. Just want to know why we have to do this today instead of waiting to see what further developments we have.
Thank you, Pam. George?
Yeah, I'm opposed to it as it is currently written. I support the concept of finding more convenient, more centralized, better locations, not being locked into a strict location. I understand and I agree with all of that. This goes too far. This is an absolute blank check that the annuals can be anywhere within the 7 regions. It could be in, I don't know, Ohio 6 years in a row. And there's nothing in here that precludes that. Some incentive to occasionally have an annual on the West Coast should be in there. And people may say I'm being a little bit paranoid, but look at the rotation of the international show. Everybody says it ought to be on the West Coast occasionally. Everybody agrees with that. Everybody says it's going to happen, but it doesn't. It keeps going back to the Eastern time zone again and again and again. And whatever region hosts the annual, wherever it's located, that region is going to have an advantage in terms of expense to get to the annual, being able to get people to the annual. It's going to affect the flavor of the annual. If all of the annuals are held on the East Coast, it's going to change the fundamental nature of this organization, and it's going to disenfranchise people in the rest of the country. So I would like to see some requirement in here. It doesn't have to be the strict rotation we have now, but some requirement that there at least occasionally be an annual on the West Coast.
Hey, George? Mike?
I just want to share somewhat in George's paranoia. about this falling into a rhythm of being consistently either on the East Coast or the East Coast or the Midwest, because that's convenient for a lot of people. I would have a problem with this as well currently, with not having some kind of indication that at least every so often it must move to the west.
Okay, thank you, Mike. Kathy and Aline, do you want to share some responses to the concerns?
Rich, I'll start.
Go ahead. Kathy.
To respond to Pam, no, this does not have to be voted on today. We just felt that as Helms Briscoe moved forward with looking at properties, that it would just be advantageous for the board to at least have this on the so-called agenda for the 2023 annual meeting. To George and Michael's concerns, the committee, when we met last July, and as Aline and I have continued to work, our intention, and I understand what intention means, is that it would rotate to the three areas, West, Midwest, East, as frequently as we absolutely possibly can, based on the properties that we can find that meet our criteria. Aline, I'll let you address anything else because you have been working directly with Helms Briscoe.
Okay. First, Pam mentioned that something may change in 4 to 5 months. This situation is not going to change in 4 to 5 months. There is no rush to have the amendment passed by the board, but it would need to be done by February. April would be too late, I think. So there's that. As Kathy mentioned, certainly the intent is to cover as many areas as possible. In working with Helms Briscoe recently, we're even having trouble finding what I would consider acceptable locations in areas like the West Coast. In other words, I don't think most people want to go to Visalia, California. There's just nothing there. Our hands are really tied by the budgetary limits. It's not just CFA, but certainly what we believe the delegates are willing to pay. And when hotel rates are $200 and higher, not including taxes, it just seems that that is going to really diminish our attendance at annual meetings. Certainly, middle of the country is usually more affordable just by hotels. The North Atlantic region is one of the most expensive areas. We always have trouble. Southern region, Florida is usually pretty good, sometimes in Texas, but the two coasts, West and East, and well, East Coast, are typically the most difficult, and they're the higher cost of living. It's just logical. I mean, those who live in those areas know what the cost of living is, and hotels in that area follow suit.
Penny, you had your hand up. Did you want to share some comments?
Now, when we had this meeting, I think primarily what Aline is searching for is that's bargaining power. If we can have it, a couple of years in a row, say in a California location, Arizona, what have you, the bargaining power does go up if they're committed for 2 consecutive years, or even up to 3. But it's difficult to bargain when you're only going to be there 1 year. I know the Florida locations down here, we're plentiful. We could have one every single year down here and reasonable, but I would not like to see part of our people flying into the worst airport in the world, and that's Orlando. So, the committee, we took into account the area, not just the annual, and we wanted to make sure that we had some place that would be enjoyable for everyone. And but Pam is right. We don't really need to jump on this right now, but we've got to start thinking about in the future. And Alan, correct me if I'm wrong. I think one of the major reasons is the difficulty that you've got finding a location and the fact that we're only stay there for 1 year really puts us into a bargaining situation where it's not advantageous. That's it.
Yes, that's correct. And the limitations within the regions, for instance, I believe it was mentioned in this report, the North Atlantic region, for instance, it's a very difficult region. Even Burlington, Vermont is out of our price range. Certainly Philadelphia, Boston, all the different types of casinos are out of our price range. Where we were in 2019, we can't even afford anymore. So what I, possibly would want to consider, I'm not sure how we could phrase this in an amendment to the bylaws, is, Virginia might be more affordable. It's pretty close to the North Atlantic region. It's on the north end of the southern region. So what we're looking for is some text or some language in the bylaws which provides flexibility.
Okay, Kathy Cahoon.
Yes, I support this concept, and I agree with the points that Kenny just made in that we would have we'd be better positioned from a bargaining standpoint if we could leverage consistency. If we could leverage 2 to 3 years in a single location, we could get a better price on rooms and food and beverage, the whole thing. As hotel costs go up in areas that are already very expensive, we're going to have fewer delegates that come and stay at the hotel that we promote to stay in. So they'll be staying in other hotels, but that means we'll have fewer rooms and other costs go up. So while this may need to be worked, the language in this proposal may need to be worked, I fully support the concept.
George?
And I want to be clear, I support the concept as well. The problem is this goes too far. Fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me. We're supposed to move the internationals around. We don't. And we know, I can tell you to a moral certainty, if it gets written the way it's written, we're not going to see annuals on the West Coast, hardly ever, if at all. And so I like the concept. I like the flexibility, but I do want to see something built in that it has to come to the West Coast, at least occasionally.
Yeah, Mosier?
Yes, I totally agree with this too, but I think George is correct. I think we need to be more specific in the language in here to basically specify that it must be alternate, to the West Coast, because I agree with George. We will be left out. It has always happened. So yes, it has to be more specific, but I of course our committee worked on this, and I do like that it's going to be more flexible because of prices and all of that, but it has to be specific that we get a turn, because it isn't as it is right now.
Okay. Mark?
Yeah, I have to comment on the reference to the international show not being on the West Coast, therefore the annual probably won't be on the West Coast. We've tried, and Pam Mosier knows, we've tried to move that event to the West Coast. And I chair the international show East. There's supposed to be a second international show each year in the West. You can't find a location for it. We'd love to have the international show on the West Coast. Find us a place to hold it.
Okay. George?
And everything Mark said is what people are going to say in the future about the annual.
Okay. Pam?
Okay, I just have to disagree. I'm sorry, Mark, a little bit with that. There are locations on the West Coast to have the international. There's one sitting here in Portland. I could have that same venue any day. It's very reasonable. That's not the issue. The issue is having somebody work it. It's, as you know, Mark, it is a lot of work, and so does Rich and everybody else. And in order to do that, you have to have the people committed to do that. I think that's where the problem lies on the West Coast, not location, but the people to work it.
Okay, thank you. Kathy, do you want to amend your motion or do you want to withdraw it and bring something back in December or February?
We will withdraw the motion and bring something back either at the December or February meetings.
Okay, Russell, are you in agreement with Kathy on withdrawing the motion?
Yes.
Okay, motion is withdrawn. Thank you, everyone, for your comments. Kathy, we look forward to what you bring back to the board. Okay, let's move on to the next agenda item. Kathy, that's you, Awards Committee.
Yes, the awards committee has been diligently working and reviewing the survey that came back in. We are currently presenting the following item to the board. First of all, the show rules that we are requesting potential changes to will be presented during Mary's report from the show rules committee, and we can address any questions and concerns there. Centralized entry clerking. We are in the process of updating show rules, which will be presented in December. But we would like to continue moving in that direction to look at show rules and make some additional adjustments that will come up in later reports before we actually move forward with an extensive program change. We're hoping that some of these other things might address some of the concerns so that we don't spend an excess amount of money that still may not do what we want it to do. So we're going to try and take that in steps instead of moving forward with a huge project to begin with. What we are interested in looking at today is the exhibitor's code of ethics. The committee has worked on this. We have asked various other committees for their input. One of them being Michael's special investigative committee, because this is a piece that they will probably wind up using in some of their investigations. And we are asking that the board approve the code of ethics as written in this report. And I'm happy to answer any questions.
Okay, that is Kathy's motion. Do I have a second?
George seconds.
Thank you, George. George, you have your hand up.
Yeah, I just want to say, as protest chair, this will be helpful for us as well. Having a set standard for what we expect of our exhibitors will make it easier when people allege there's unsportsmanlike conduct or conduct detrimental or some other things. This gives a little more specifics. You know, reasonable minds can differ about exactly how it should be worded, but just getting something on file, getting something on paper will be a big improvement. And so I support it.
Mark?
I've gotten a number of comments, negative comments about this, that it goes too far, that it deals with things like private emails that people send if there's something derogatory, negative, objectionable in it, that they could be subject to disciplinary action based on the code of ethics here. I think it needs to be reworked and more manageable.
Mark, was there, you said a number, is there any others specifically that you wanted to bring to the attention today?
No.
Okay, Rachel?
Thank you. I also appreciate the effort. I think in my opinion, there's some vagueness here as well as some freedom of speech issues that I have a little bit of a sensitivity to. My major concern is that if this is adopted or something like this is adopted, that it would be in effect from today forward and not used as a guideline for anything that we may have currently pending.
Okay, thank you. Pam Delabar?
Kathy, many years ago, I wrote the breeder code of ethics, and it was something that really helped us in the animal welfare and in cruelty and neglect cases, because people were bound by that breeder code of ethics when they used CFA's services. Plus, it was sent out to people. What we need to be careful of when we have events and circumstances that we become really involved with, we have to be careful that we are consuming them and not letting these things end up consuming us. If we get too specific, then we don't have the ability to infer or to work towards trying to correct a certain action. Conversely, if it's too broad, then we get a number of problems with the protests and requests for investigations. It just becomes unmanageable. I will support this, but we may want to look at refining it down the road a bit.
Melanie?
Thank you. I want to commend the committee on taking action with the task that was brought to them and making a really good stab at trying to define some of the issues that we have accused ourselves of being too vague on. I think this is a huge step in the right direction. George is right. It'll provide some guidance for protest and ombudsman issues. I do want to point out there's, I believe, a typo under definitions where it says intimidation, to make timid, frightened, fearful, especially to compel or deter, as if, I think they mean by threats.
Oh, you are right, Melanie. I apologize for that.
But I think this is a huge step in the right direction. And yes, we might need to refine it lately, but kudos to the committee for really taking this task head on.
Annette?
Thank you. I guess I can be an outspoken person. I have an issue in the code of ethics where the I will stuff is with the fifth one. I think the fourth one, I will communicate with fellow exhibitors, show officials, and the public in responsible, respectful, and professional manner is sufficient right there. I have a problem with the next one where I will not engage in or facilitate any discriminatory, denigrating, intimidating, threatening, disruptive, or just, and my issue with that is it's a two-way street. What one person says and how someone else takes it is where the issue is always going to lie. I like the fact that you define harassment, intimidation, and coercion, but I'm having a little bit of a problem with that last one. So maybe instead it should say that last sentence would go to the end of the fourth, excuse me, I will. So where it says with the public in a responsible, respectful, and professional manner, this includes not engaging in any form of harassment, intimidation, or coercion. I think when you say any discriminatory, denigrating, intimidating, threatening, disruptive, or I won't do any of those things, that's what's opening up the big can of worms. That's just me. Thank you.
Thank you, Annette. George?
Yeah, I'm kind of trying to figure out the new democratic rules of order we're under. To correct that one typo under intimidation, where we're changing it tie threats to buy threats, do we need a motion, or can the maker of the motion simply make the amendment on their own?
And Shelley will correct me if I'm wrong, Kathy can make the amendment during this motion. Shelley, am I correct?
That's correct. She can just make that amendment right now and there's no motion needed.
Okay, well, if Kathy makes that amendment, I'm fine. If Kathy doesn't make that amendment, I'll make a motion.
No, I will make that amendment as part of my motion to correct that wording to the word by.
And Kathy, you can amend parts of this as long as you inform the board exactly what you're amending, such as what Melanie just presented, or I'm sorry, what Annette just presented.
Okay, are there any other comments?
Okay, go ahead and respond to the comments.
Okay. I am currently fine with amending the 5th line to remove "I will not engage in" to the period, and move everything up to be part of line number 4. And as this code of ethics continues, then we can continue to refine it. That was our thought as well. As situations come up, things happen. We can always, whether it's my committee or another committee, can always go back and refine this as needed. But I think this is a good start. This will also live on the website, which will make it easier for us to amend it in the future instead of it being part of some other document that is harder to change and amend.
Okay, Rachel, did you understand all the amendments Kathy just made?
I believe so. So I'm striking through the paragraph that says I will not engage in or facilitate any discriminatory, denigrating, so on and so forth. So
Yes,
the paragraph before definitions. Okay,
Yes,
perfect. Thank you.
And then you're gonna keep, this includes any form of harassment, intimidation, or coercion, and put that under the 4th line, correct?
correct, Rich, correct.
Okay.
And we're changing the word "tie" to the word "by."
Okay. All right.
Can I say something here? I think I'm confused about that, because the 4th sentence says, "I will communicate this way." And then you say this includes any form of harassment, intimidation, or concern. Did I misunderstand the change?
Good point.
Okay, so I think this needs to read, "I will not engage in harassment, intimidation, or coercion." Definitions to follow.
Thank you.
So Rachel, the 5th line down would now read, "I will not engage in any harassment, intimidation, or coercion."
Right.
Period.
Okay, George, you second this. Are you in agreement with the changes?
Yes, I am.
Okay, very good. Shelley, do you have any more comments?
The comment I had was when you say this, "I will not engage in any form of harassment," or "I will not engage in harassment, intimidation, or coercion." Can it just say "in any CFA setting"?
Yes, I'm fine with that.
Thank you. Otherwise it seems broad.
Yep, you are most correct, Shelley.
And if Kathy accepts that amendment, I accept it under my second as well.
Okay, let's be clear on it. So Rachel and I are clear. Where is that being added?
Okay, so the line would read, "I will not engage in any form of harassment, intimidation, or coercion in any CFA setting."
Okay, thank you.
Got it. Thank you.
All right, do we have anything else? Okay, seeing no hands, I am going to call for the vote on this. If you are in favor, please raise your hand. Okay, I have Annette Wilson, Kathy Calhoun, Melanie Morgan, Pam Delabar, George Eigenhauser, Carol Krasnowski, Mike Shelton, Paula Noble, Kathy Dunham, John Clilla, Russell Webb, Yukiko Hayata, Sharon Roy, Pam Mosier, and Kenny Curley. Please lower your hand. If you are opposed, please raise your hand. Mark Hannon and Rachel Anger are opposed. Please lower your hand. Any abstentions, raise your hand. Rachel, I don't see any abstentions. Please call the vote.
I have 15 yes votes, 2 no votes, 0 abstentions.
Okay, this motion passed.
Thank you.
Okay, Kathy, continue. Do you have anything else?
That should be all for me until we meet in closed session. Thank you.
Okay. Mark?
Yeah, I just have one question. I'm curious why we have the centralized entry clerk program here when that's a part of the IT committee, not a part of the awards committee.
Kathy, you want to answer that question?
Mark, the centralized entry clerking was originally part of the report that was presented in June. That was under the the ad hoc committee that I chaired in May. And that was one of the recommendations from the committee at that point. That committee has since been disbanded, and the awards committee has continued following those agenda items that were approved. I am the committee and I as chair have been working with Tim and central office on and James on all of those issues that require any IT input. And it would also fall under my subcommittee for the entry clerking program. So that also falls as a subcommittee of IT, and we have been having multiple discussions.
My understanding, though, is in June, when Rich made the committee appointments, he made the centralized entry clerk part of the IT committee. So anyone looking for discussions, motions, et cetera, dealing with that would normally be expected to look under IT, not under awards committee. It's really not an award.
No, I understand it's not an award, but we are following the processes that came out of the other committee. I mean, that's just a piece of what that committee had proposed, and we're still following it. If Rich wants us to do something different, I'm certainly happy to do that. It's just, that's how it was presented at the time, so.
Well, and we can further discuss this at a different point, but at this point in time, the committee at the time presented in June their recommendations, and the subcommittee's been disbanded. The awards committee's got to follow through. Now, at some point in time, Kathy, if you want to report to the board that the centralized centralized entry clerking is going to be turned over to IT, then you can report to the board that that's going to happen. But let's finish your work and then turn it over to them. And you are involved in the entry clerk program. I believe you are the subcommittee chair of that, correct?
That is correct, Rich. And really all the awards committee has left to do with centralized entry clerking is to look at the show rules that govern entry clerks to try and clarify those for this process to continue if that's how it's going to go through the process. So we are really about done with our piece of the work, and it will be turned over to the IT committee at that point to continue working within those show rules and making the adjustments that need to be adjusted. So.
Okay, thank you. Carol?
Yes, I think this would be more appropriate to be sent to the show rules committee at that point, because they are the ones that are going to have to write the rules to make the changes required.
Carol, that's true, but we need to put we need to get the recommendations ready to send to the show rules committee. And then they will absolutely be a part of the process. And Mary and I have already talked, and we're hopefully going to present those in December. She will do a secondary show rules report that the show rules committee has approved.
That's great. Kathy, please also include, if you haven't been doing it already, include Carol in on that, as Carol is the board liaison for show rules. That'll help move things along, and it may also answer some questions that Mary and her team may have.
Yep.
James?
Yeah, thanks. I just wanted to interject a little bit on the IT side with the entry clerk and kind of address, I understand where Mark's concern is with the IT side. That's going to get more into the technical. Once Kathy's kind of figured out the show rule changes and what we need to change there, we'll kind of drive some of the technical requirements we will have for the entry clerk, centralized entry clerk, because we're going to be incorporating a lot of that into the new ECAT, the system revamp, which we're in the very beginning phases of. So we're not even to that point where we can start rolling those technical requirements into that. So once they kind of have that figured out, then we'll look at the technical requirements, and then we'll have more to report of what we think it'll look like and how it'll function.
Yep.
Okay, very good. Thank you. Does anybody else have any more questions or comments for Kathy? Kathy, do you have any more you want to review?
No, I'm good. Thank you.
Okay, thank you to your committee for taking this on and continuing to see it to its end.